Good evening. We begin tonight with breaking news out of Idaho, with police telling NBC News there are fatalities in a shooting incident outside an In-N-Out burger restaurant.
Gunman opens fire at a crowded In-N-Out burger. This is in Twin Falls, Idaho. 3 people are now dead, at least 2 others injured.
America doesn't have a mental illness problem. America has an evil problem.
What's happening?
What happened?
What's happening?
Shoot. Go. Just go. Go. Somebody got shot.
There's a shooter at In-N-Out.
Everybody's running.
I can also reassure the community right now, we believe that the threat to the community is over. The suspected shooter in this incident is deceased.
The suspect was identified as a 24-year-old young man named Chad Williams.
So they finally identified the piece of shit. His name is Chad Williams. And before the right-wing MAGA conservative nut jobs try to spin the narrative like they always do and make it seem like this is a white, liberal, gay, non-binary person who did it was a white Nazi. He was a Nazi. Confirmed. Don't let them try to spin the narrative.
Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but I understand what he means when he says they'll try to spin the narrative. Because whenever there is a mass shooting by a white shooter, the conversation follows a familiar pattern. They start throwing around the usual playbook, trying to make the conversation about mental illness. But millions of people struggle from mental illness every day and never go out and kill anybody.
At this time, we are still working to determine the full set of circumstances in this incident, including the suspect's actions and possible motivations.
Police say the motive behind this shooting is unknown, but Williams' family is cooperating in the investigation.
But I'm here to tell you his motive was pure evil. Because I'm not going to let the media frame this the way they do when the shooter is white. This coward shot white victims, but I guarantee you there won't be a label called white on white crime. And this horrific act won't be connected to his race. They will individualize this, not racialize it. His actions will be treated as one of a lone wolf.
A former FBI special agent says the suspect's actions caught on video could provide important clues in the investigation.
This tells me they're a person on a mission, but likely somebody who is a lone wolf type character.
Police say an off-duty state trooper and an armed citizen returned fire, helping drive the suspect away and potentially saving lives and more casualties.
Tonight, new video showing the moment a man stepped in to stop a shooter who opened fire outside this Idaho In-N-Out burger Saturday afternoon. You see a gunman with an AR-style rifle unleashing several rounds in the drive-thru of the popular fast food chain, which opened just days ago in Twin Falls. Another man then returns fire. Lane Cohen witnessed the shooting from his car.
Is he a hero?
Yeah, I would say he definitely distracted the shooter from shooting more people. The shooter was solely focused on him, and it allowed us to get out. I mean, the car directly ahead of me was getting shot.
And don't get me wrong, that citizen was a real hero. And thanks to cameras and social media, we are able to see him in action in the moment. But believe me, even if he didn't exist, we would still be hearing about some hero, because this is part of the pattern we often see. They're going to tell you about the person who jumped in front of the bullet, the teacher who protected the students, the employee who helped them escape, or the stranger who put his life on the line to save someone else. They do this to create a balance so you won't keep the focus on the shooter. And this is one of those media tricks to redirect your attention. Now, that's not to say the hero doesn't deserve the spotlight.
Hundreds of people running for cover as the shots rang out, but investigators say 2 men, an off-duty state trooper and this man, 35-year-old Jordan Salinas, fired back.
I peeked around the right-hand side of that sign closest to the road, and that's where I saw the individual with his rifle pointed at the vehicles.
Authorities believe those heroic actions drove the shooter from the scene and likely saved lives.
He seemed unusually comfortable aiming that rifle at those cars. And then as soon as some rounds started coming at him, everything changed. Immediately, all that, all that bravado he had immediately crumbled.
But the story doesn't stop with the hero. The next part is understanding the person who committed the act. Chad Williams, his actions, his motivation becomes talking points, his background, his beliefs, and what caused him to commit such a heinous act. That will become the main theme, because there's no way someone who looked like him would just go out and do something so evil. But not all people fall for their tricks.
In devastating news for racists, the shooter in Idaho was a white guy. So instead of being able to blame an entire race or religion, they have to blame mental health. If he were an immigrant, they'd be yelling, deport them all. But he's white, so they're saying, lads, you have to check on your friends. Because mental health is only an excuse for white criminals. If a white guy did 9/11, they'd have blamed it on the male loneliness epidemic. And I know 9/11 wasn't done by a white guy. It was two white guys.
People are already asking, is he a liberal? Is he conservative? They want you to focus in on his political beliefs and what influenced him, not whether he had a father. Did he come from a fatherless home, his family structure, or his criminal background? That becomes the battle, his politics, liberal versus conservative, gun rights versus gun control. The conversation becomes about how his ideas shaped him, what beliefs influenced him, and what led him down this path. They want the talking points to shift to political beliefs instead of his race.
Well, it's been confirmed. Liberal dude did the mass shooting in Idaho. You could tell just by looking at the person's photo that it was a liberal dude. There's no conservative man that's going to look that bad, but it's been confirmed. Liberal lunatic did the mass shooting in Idaho.
And after that, we know the next playbook is going to be talking to his family, his neighbors, his friends. And they do this to humanize him.
I was very shocked because I never expected something like that to come from him.
Elijah Mosley says the man now accused in Saturday's mass shooting wasn't just someone he recognized. It was someone he considered a friend. The College of Southern Idaho confirms Chad Williams attended the school from 2022 to 2023, but he didn't graduate. Elijah Mosley, a former classmate, says they lived right across the hall from each other in the dorms and even served in student government together. Mosley tells me Williams was quiet, encouraging, kind, someone he considered a good friend. The two lost touch after college, but Mosley says he never saw any signs that made him think something like this was possible.
I was heartbroken because that same feeling is when you realize that someone who was your friend ends up doing something so heinous, and you just question, like, where'd that come from? How'd that happen? Why'd that happen?
They not only do this to create some kind of compassion for him, but also to send a message like, see, he was different. Something happened. Something led him to commit such a horrific crime. He snapped. To make sure you know, oh, he's not a thug. Maybe he's a coward. He could just be an evil-ass person. No, they don't want to send that message. Or talk about how a lot of young white men might just have violent tendencies. That's why they end up being mass shooters.
I get on here every week and talk about how white men are the most statistically dangerous people to exist in the United States. And once again, we have somebody proving that to be correct. We don't know the name of this piece of shit yet, but he executed 3 people in Idaho yesterday with a high-power rifle, and I'm going to bet that it was racially motivated. Not only do white men commit the most mass shootings, but they also commit the most violent with weapon crimes. They commit the most family annihilations, the most domestic violence, the most sexual violence, the most sexual violence against children, the most human trafficking, larceny, drunk driving, drug manufacturing, drug trafficking, insider trading, tax evasion, fraud. I can continue if you would prefer me to, but imagine being offended by statistics, being offended by patterns, being offended by history, making you feel so small that in some way you're going to defend this guy just because you're a white man.
Now imagine if the shooter in Idaho was black. The conversation would be very different. You guys know that. And we know this because we have had black mass shooters before. Same evil acts, different discussion. The question would not be about what the one person did anymore. It would be about his culture, his community, his environment. It would go something like this. What is wrong with the black culture? What is happening in his community? This is why people have black fatigue. See, the black shooter's actions become a conversation about the entire group of people. But the Idaho shooter, the focus stays on him, his horrific act, his actions, his decisions, his choices. And that is how it should be, regardless of race. One person's evil actions should not become evidence against an entire group, against an entire community, because there are millions of people who have similar circumstances or struggles and never commit acts like this. The Idaho shooter's evil doesn't represent anybody but him. In the same way a crime committed by a black person represents that black person, that one man's action.
Broken down to its very last calm now.